Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video. Today we are going to be using the You Matter set from Simon Says Stamp, and we're going to be doing some watercoloring. Oh, and the stitch rectangle dies too. Yeah, that's important. So I have these leftover watercolor pieces from cutting down bigger pieces, and I thought that I would use them to do some backgrounds. So I'm using a wide flat brush and some distress ink, and typically in watercolor there are two types of techniques, wet on wet and wet on dry. So here we're going to start with the wet on dry, just so you can see the different looks. So I have water on my paintbrush, but I do not have any water on my paper. So I'm picking up the pigment and then just painting it down. I just paint it in like a swoop for the bottom right hand side to have some color. Now please let me tell you that normally I would tape this down, but I don't have any masking or washi tape or anything that would not tear my paper, so I'm just winging it here. But I would recommend that you tape it down because then you won't run into some of the problems that I have later on. But because you can layer watercolors, and even though these are distress inks, they do work with water, they have the same kind of properties. So because you can layer them, each layer I'm drying in between, but the pigment is getting darker and darker, so you can build up this gradual effect. So I'm just following that same kind of swoopy motion, and then like I said, drying in between and getting this really cool buildup of color. Here I've used most of the Mermaid Lagoon, so I'm just going to smush it back down on my Ranger craft mat just to pick up some more pigment. And each time I'm not even really using less water. It's just really the color that's building up itself. And then I'm going to do one final layer, which I have to tell you was not much darker than what was already there. But I felt like that corner piece was just a little bit too big, so I wanted to fill that in with all the layers. This would be super cool for like a beach scene, because all of those, being able to see all those different layers. So now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it wet on wet so you can see the difference in the two techniques. So I'm using clean clear water. I'm painting the same swoosh, but then I'm just going to drop in the pigment. And I'm sorry that it's so close to the edge of the screen. Give me a second. I'll realize that I need to move it up. But so really I'm not taking it all the way out to the water's edge. I'm mostly concentrating my pigment into the bottom right hand corner and just letting it kind of do its thing. But just like in the previous card, I wanted it to be darker on the right hand side. So because I didn't tape anything down, using the wet on wet technique, I get a lot of water pooling in the bottom. When this happens, I just run a dry cloth across the bottom edge and kind of suck up that extra water. But it does suck up the extra pigment, which kind of I don't like, but what are you going to do? I mean, that's just what it is. I didn't tape it down. I didn't prepare things properly, so make sure you're taping yours down. So then once I'm good with the amount of pigment that I have on it, I'm going to go ahead and, apparently I'm going to suck up some more water. But eventually I'm going to heat set this as well. And again, it's the non-taping that's causing the water to pool at certain areas. If it was taped flat, that wouldn't be the case. The water would move more evenly across the board. So here I got a little spot of blue on my bright white. And thankfully watercolor is super forgiving, so you can just blot it up, go in with clean clear water, let it sit on there for a second, and then blot it up again, and it'll go back to white and nobody will ever know that you got a spot where you didn't want it. So here's these two side by side, and you can see it's a complete difference. The right hand side, the wet on dry, is just so much more controlled. I prefer wet on wet just because I like that traditional watercolor look, but I mean, it's cool to do either or, like whatever floats your boat, whatever look you're going for. So here we're going to do the same thing. This is the wet on dry, and we're using multiple colors just so I could show you that it does work both ways. So I'm going in a rainbow pattern. I started with picked raspberry, and then I'm putting down carved pumpkin, kind of overlapping the two colors. I'll do the same thing with the mustard seed, just so that there's a nice blend. And then through mowed lawn, and then my top color will be that Mermaid Lagoon that we just used. So why am I making multiple cards? The reason I'm making multiple cards is because my friend Jennifer is doing a drive for a school in Cincinnati that had some really terrible things graffitied on it. And so in order to support those teachers, she's doing a card drive just to let them know that they matter. So this stamp set is so fitting. Side note, this is the first layer and it's super pale, but you can keep building up the intensity of these colors even with the wet on dry. So because, like I said before, because they're transparent just like in the last card, we can just keep building up those colors till it's the same intensity that we want it to be. And since I like a bolder color, I did 2 layers. Anywho, so I am a firm believer in supporting our public servants. I am a firm believer in supporting your teachers, because without teachers, we would literally have nothing else. I mean, you wouldn't have doctors, you wouldn't have lawyers, you wouldn't have policemen, you wouldn't have anything if you did not have teachers. They are legitimately the backbone of our society, and they deserve to be acknowledged for the things that they do, the way that they contribute. I mean, they're helping raise our children, people, for God's sakes. So anyway, that's where these cards are going to be going when I'm done. This is the wet on wet version of the rainbow, and you can kind of see already the difference in how things are flowing because we put down the clean clear water in the first place. Again, my pink is pooling at the bottom, and it's pooling at the bottom because I don't have my paper tape down. So when you do yours, do what you're supposed to do. Don't do what I'm doing unless you're really into this look where the color pools at the bottom. Then do this, because this is what you'll get. On the top left, because that's where I'm holding the paper still, it's also pooling on the left-hand side. I'm just going to use a dry paper towel to kind of blot that up so that I have the area for the blue. I'm not opposed to my colors mixing or kind of doing their own thing, but I just wanted to have a good solid line of blue. Because I didn't take the water up far enough, I'm putting down another line of clean clear water, and then I'm just touching my brush to the edge of the clean clear water and the edge of the Mermaid Lagoon that I had put down. With the wet on wet, you can go back in right away without having to wait for it to dry and add any more color intensity that you want. Just make sure that when you're putting your color down, you have as much moisture on your brush as you do on your paper. Because if you don't, you'll suck pigment up from the paper instead of putting it down. So because I kind of have this arch going on, the orange is running down into my pink, and my green is going to flow up into my blue, which is fine. It ended up being a little bit more of a teal color than the Mermaid Lagoon is traditionally, but it's okay. It's still pretty. And there's these two side by side. With the wet on wet, you can see I got a little taller, but that's totally fine. I ran these through my die cutting machine with the largest die from the Stitch Rectangles, and then I'm going to work on the sentiment. So the one I picked, which there's so many great ones in this set, just really encouraging and loving, and I just love them. But the one I picked was, "You make the world a better place." And I think it's totally fitting for these teachers. So you'll see I'm using my large Misty, and I'm putting the sentiment right in the center-ish area. And this is so because I'm going to be stamping them in different places on the cards, I don't want to have to keep moving my sentiment. So the sentiment is too long, so I'm using a Post-it note to ink up the "You make the world," and then I'm going to ink this up forever until my child has children, and we're just going to be here for 100 years. But because I'm stamping on watercolor paper, I wanted to make sure I was going to get a good impression. And so for each one, I'm just turning the Post-it note each time. If you leave the Post-it note there and you're putting the ink in the same area, eventually it will saturate your paper and it can get into the onto the stamp behind it. And here, this is what I was talking about, moving it. So I wanted this one to be lower, more along the edge of the swoop. And because I used the bigger Misty, it just made it so I didn't have to move my sentiment. It didn't have to be a pain. I could just move the card around. Now I'm going to stamp the other half of the sentiment. So I cleaned off my stamp, I moved the U, and then I always stamp it again off on just some scrap paper, so to make sure that it's clean. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the Post-it note for the other half to stamp the second portion of it. So these were mounted flat because I have to mail them. They were mounted flat onto just a white cardstock base. And then I'm using these clear droplets from Pretty Pink Posh, which I had never used before. I felt like the card needed something, and I didn't want to use sequins because I wanted them to be kind of gender neutral. And I forgot that I had gotten these clear droplets, and they look so cool. I mean, they legit look like water droplets, and especially on the blue cards, which already kind of have a water or a beachy feel, they just look awesome. So yeah, those were such a good buy. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys learned a little bit about watercoloring and about how to just love and encourage the people in your community and your teachers, to support them. And I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.